Today we're going to be answering 3 questions that atheists always ask me, always ask questions, and when you look at it in context, it makes a lot more sense.
Atheists are always asking you these questions, are they? Well, I imagine if you're making this video with that title, Easy Debunks to Atheist Questions, you're going to be absolutely destroying those atheblab questioninos. And not, say, confusing something being easy to do with something actually being worthwhile or effective. I mean, having a massive crap is not exactly a complicated task, but flushing, after you have managed to make a poop mountain that sticks out over the seat, well, let's just say it requires additional equipment. Let's hope that your in context isn't just as shit.
So, I trust me, if you watch the end of this video, I promise that this is going to make a lot more sense. And if you are a Christian watching this, then take some notes. These are, at least in my opinion, the best ways to answer these questions.
Wait, are they the best? Or are they the easiest? Because I sincerely doubt that they would be both. What do they say? There's very little that's really worth doing when it's easy. Because, sure, you wouldn't want to stop breathing just because it's easy, but achieving things? Well, it's not really an achievement if any arsehole can do it. So, yeah, to any Christians watching, I would personally recommend against using these arguments unless you really want to end up in a Sursic video, being made to look very, very stupid by an idiot like me.
Okay, so the first question is, why is there evil and why do bad things happen to good people?
Because they deserve it. Bloody good people walking around not being awful and doing nice things and not even committing any atrocities. You think you're better than me just because you're better than me? Bastards.
Now, first of all, we have to look at the fact that there is no good people.
Wow. And guys like this call atheists nihilist. Holy shit. No good people? Look, I would argue that there probably aren't enough, or that maybe there are, but being good just isn't enough, since if you don't also act, etc. But to say that there aren't any good people whatsoever is so utterly nonsensical, it could only come from a mouth of someone who thinks that the Bible isn't 99% ancient nonsense, especially when the other 1% isn't exactly amazing either. Damn.
If you believe in the Bible, if you believe in Romans 3:23, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, then we know that there is no good people. We all have sinned.
Even if that wasn't ludicrous gibberish, the idea that one cannot be good after having done something bad is just a really stupid concept to espouse. If you have any interest in a good world, because it basically means that there's no being better than you were yesterday. So what actually would be the point? Although, to be fair, a lot of these guys really don't believe in a better world. It's all a game show for an ultimate reward. Kind of scary when you realize just how many Christians essentially view it as a death cult.
If you have failed one of the commandments, then you failed them all. One sin takes you to hell. Not all sins are the same, but they all have the commonality of all taking you to hell.
Your argument here doesn't even stand up to itself. If you have committed one sin, okay, well, what if you haven't committed any? Then you're a good person, dumbass. Now, what you wanted to say, because apparently this sexy idiot has to explain your stupid religion to you, is that humans are born into sin, aka original sin, so you don't even stand a chance in the first place. Now, obviously, that is yet more obscene gotcha bullshit, especially when you, at that point, just get auto-held for doing absolutely nothing. But even if your version was true, going to infinity torture prison for one mistake is literally the most evil thing that I could think of. So getting told I'm bad by someone who's infinitely evil sounds like the pot calling the kettle Musso Black 4.0. But seriously, the least you could do is know what your religion says, mate.
Okay? So that's the first thing to get out of the way. And the second thing is, why does God, allow bad things to happen?
Because he is evil. He loves that shit. We already established that. At least if he's not a made-up guy and your book is true. Otherwise, the far more obvious and, coherent response would be because that's what we expect from a universe without a supposed all-powerful guy who doesn't like it when bad things happen. So when bad things happen, it seems pretty obvious that a guy with those characteristics doesn't real.
And the thing is, we're in a fallen world, okay? We are in a place where we have caused all the problems.
Oh, silly me. I thought God was in control of his creation, using all his creation powers and his ability to know all the things that are ever going to happen. I mean, if you can perfectly predict the future and set a series of events into action based on that perfect knowledge, in what universe is that not entirely your fault exactly? It's like me knowing that if I don't ask my kids to tidy their room, that their room will be messy, and then absolutely losing my shit at them when they in fact didn't tidy their room. It's psychotic.
Now, you can make the argument, oh, but if God truly loves everyone, then why doesn't he just, heal people and stop all of the evil? But the issue is, we are choosing to partake in this evil.
Again, as a parent, if I punish my children for making mistakes like not knowing what I wanted them to do right now because I literally refused to tell them, so they had no real ability to avoid that error, I'm the bad guy. And hell, even if that eventually results in a, say, constantly tidy room, at what cost exactly? My kids now choose not to have fun just in case my crazy ass decides today's the day. And apparently the punishment is not taking them to the hospital when they get sick from all the stress I induced in them for my insane parenting style. Again, who cares what a person like that calls evil? Unless they're just making a comparison to themselves.
Now, yes, it's true that we are sinful, but also we still choose to partake in evil. You don't accidentally sin. Okay? You don't accidentally, lie or steal. Now maybe you unconsciously do it, but you're still not accidentally doing it.
Unconscious actions absolutely lead to accidents. The hell are you talking about? Is putting the garbage on a plate and the snack in the bin on purpose? Is straining your soup directly down the drain, leaving you with a delicious colander full of rinds, leaves and stems not an accident? Is leaving your pasta to burn into the hardest, most difficult to clean substance on earth what you wanted to do? Hell no, it's all unconscious, obviously. And did I forget to have lunch today? Apparently so, but at no point was any of that a deliberate act, you utter buffoon. So yeah, people can and do accidentally do things that are pretty shitty sometimes, certainly at the level of lying and stealing, because it can depend on exactly how you define them as well. The real question as to their goodness is if they can recognize that and work to prevent them in the future, something that your framework explicitly denies them.
Okay, so the reason God doesn't, the reason though is, sickness. The reason that, those, quote unquote good people have terrible stuff happen to them is because of the evil place that we have fostered, that we have created, that humans have made. It's not God's fault that we decide to go against him.
So, all people are responsible for the actions of some people. Are you actually kidding? That is like saying it's my fault that you don't know what the hell you're talking about, even with my attempts to get you not to be such a ridiculous horse person. No, that is not how that works, matey. Especially not when your God apparently rigged the game in the first place.
A lot of times people think God created evil. But realistically, what happened is evil is just the abstract of good.
Realistically, none of this is realistic, dude. It's all very obviously made up. Also, evil is the abstract of good, is it? Wow, that's not even close to what you wanted to say, because you essentially ended up saying that evil is the distillation of good, which is frankly both a wild thing to say, but in the context of this video, really, really funny, seeing as you would argue that God's will is definitely the abstraction of good. Brilliant.
Now what that means is think of good as light and evil as darkness, okay? If I turn the light on, then, it's bright. You can see what's happening in that room. But if you turn the light on, if you turn the light off, it's dark. Evil is like that darkness.
Utter drivel. Evil isn't the absence of good, because evil, as almost anyone with a brain will likely define it as, is ultimately the presence of suffering, especially as that suffering might otherwise vastly outweigh any possible benefit, which is why you can't just say, but what about exercise though? And we don't see suffering in its relation to good, nice things. Shit can be extremely mid, so to speak, and you will still absolutely recognize pain as pain. This is just a completely nonsensical analogy that only a moron would think means anything.
Darkness isn't a different kind of light. Darkness is just the not having of light, if that makes any sense. It's basically just the opposite of light.
Even if that wasn't a category error, again, your dude is supposed to be the all guy, very power, much light. So his presence shouldn't be optional. Frankly, it couldn't be optional in the way he's presented by much of your religion. So the fact that he is really makes it sound like he doesn't actually real.
Evil isn't something that needed to be created. Just like darkness. Before the earth was created, God didn't make darkness because that's what was there. Darkness was there. Before God made the sun, the earth was dark. So it's just, evil isn't something that God created.
Again, even with shit analogy accepted, evil is something that God allows and cannot prevent. He is incapable of fighting this thing that he hates, and thus doesn't sound all that godly. Oh, and that's assuming that all the things you think are evil are the things that are actually the absence of God, and not just your subjective opinion on what you really want to be God's opinion.
It's something that is just there because it's the opposite of good. Now, question number 2 is, why doesn't God just reveal himself, doesn't just show himself to everybody?
Because things that can reveal themselves have to exist in the first place.
Now, that question to begin with is kind of funny because, in a sense, God already has. Like, the Bible even says how, you can know that God is real just by looking around and just within a reason because, for there to be a cause, there has to be an uncaused cause.
Yes, I suppose it is a very funny question if you assume your own premise to be correct and that your main evidence is a thing that says that it's totally correct because it says so. Unfortunately for everyone else, it's just a question with a really obvious answer when you think about it for even a moment.
Just like the couch there. That couch is only there because someone made the couch. And for someone to make the couch, there had to be a cow. And for that cow to be there, they had to have been bred and from the ancestors of cows and all that kind of stuff, right?
The fact that you don't show or even preface that that's a leather couch over there does make me wonder, and this isn't a dig at this guy's speaking voice. It's not something that he can help and thus isn't subject to mockery like saying stupid shit is. But it makes me think that he thinks that couches are made from cows because they both start with the ka sound. Also, many things that you can point to that you know for a fact weren't created but were formed from processes like forests or beaches and the like. So no, the look at things, therefore create a guy did that right is not a good argument.
So just within reason, you can already prove that there's a God and God's already revealed himself.
Within reason, it barely even qualifies as a bad argument, let alone a reasonable one. Or evidence for that matter, since it confuses the idea of what happens in a universe with what rules, if any, apply to the universe itself, and also assumes that they would not apply to God, but doesn't give the universe the same accommodation because you don't want the universe to not need a creator.
But when people ask this question, they're ignoring all of that. What they're actually asking is, why doesn't God, if he wants everyone to know him, why doesn't God just come down in front of us all and say, hey, follow me?
We aren't ignoring it. It's just a really stupid thing to say. And yes, if God is the guy you think that he is, and he absolutely wants the things that you claim he does, that should literally not be a problem. The fact that he doesn't is absolutely damning, ironically.
Now, the issue with that is he has. And what do I mean by that? When I say he has Jesus, he came 2,000 years ago.
First off, came, lol. And second, you do realize that atheists don't think that that story is true, right? Like everything that you have said so far, it just runs on the assumption that the things you believe are the things that everybody believes. And somehow we're just not the same faith as you because, what, we choose not to believe? No, Dib-Dab. We don't believe the things you believe. That's why we don't believe them. This really is not all that complicated.
He was turning water into wine. He was duplicating food. He was healing people that people would say there's no chance that these people are going to be healed. He died on the cross and resurrected. And people still didn't believe him.
Or he did none of those things and then people came along later and claimed that he did those things. You see how that's not the same? And that's not to mention just how few people were actually even paying attention at the time of his supposed resurrection. To say the least, it was not a lot.
If God were to just float down on a cloud, people would still not believe. Because the issue is people love sin.
You are conflating two very different situations. One is a grand global revelation that would frankly be undeniable because God could make it undeniable, and a story that some people told about a guy doing impossible things maybe. This has nothing to do with sin and everything to do with your unrestrained credulity. You
may not may not want to admit that, but you enjoy the things that you do. If you have, a drug addiction, why is it an addiction? Because you love it.
That is not how addiction works, you stupid little... I'm sorry, I don't usually lose my cool like that, but that was frankly one of the most profoundly ignorant statements I have ever heard. Addiction has nothing to do with loving something. You don't even have to like it to become addicted. The neural receptors in your brain have simply become dependent on whatever chemical the drug supplies to you. The fact that you don't know the basics of how addiction works means you should not be talking about it.
You might be trying to stop, and you might hate it in a sense, but there's something about it that's making you keep on doing it. If you have a porn addiction, it's because you love doing it. Something about it, you might hate a lot of it, but something about it is keep on drawing you in.
I won't get into the compulsion versus addiction debate because it's not particularly useful here. But yes, you are right that you can hate it, but that doesn't mean that you keep doing it because you like it. Cravings or compulsions or even desire are not synonyms for enjoyment. Learn the difference, or again, preferably don't talk about shit you clearly don't understand. Although then again, that would mean that you would have to just stop talking at all, it seems.
People love their sin. If they know that God is real and they know that, God's made 10 commandments for us to follow by, then now there's a moral code that they have to, listen to.
Oh, look, it's almost like you can see that maybe they don't know that there's a God, mostly because, and especially based on yours in particular, the arguments and the lack of evidence for his existence make that pretty obvious, that he doesn't.
Now they can't just go, oh, well, I can do whatever I want because there's no God. No, now if they actually believe in God and they submit to him, they're going to have to be like, well, crap. Now I actually have to follow what he says. Now I have to do what he tells me to do.
Well, that's convincing. If I believed in God, that would mean that I believe in God. What a profound and very clever observation. So clever, I'm surprised you weren't scarfing down crayons as you said it, you absolute melt.
So even if God were to show himself again, it wouldn't even matter. The Bible even says that, people will, if God were to just show himself, then nope, there would still be people that wouldn't believe. Jesus could float down on a cloud, smack you in the face, and tell you to believe in him, and there would still be people that wouldn't.
Okay, but what about the people who that would work on? I mean, there's got to be a lot of them. The fact that some people wouldn't, well, screw these other guys apparently. The arbitrariness of the refusal to do something that he has tried before and apparently worked on at least a few people to then just never do it again is as suspect as you are a silly man. That is to say, very.
And there's also a distinction between believing and accepting and having faith in. James 2:19. You believe in the God. You believe there's one God. You do well. Even the demons believe and tremble. The demons believe that there was a God. But putting your faith in God is a completely different thing. There's people that no matter how much evidence you put down, they're just not going to believe, or they're not going to put their faith in God.
Wait, are you suggesting that if demons did put their faith in God, then what? They would be saved? And the thing is, the faith argument still fails so hard because plenty of theists are convinced that they know for a fact that God is real. Does that lessen the value of their faith? And even if a being comes down and proves their power to you, you still have to put your faith into the idea that following them is not the key to a fresh kind of hell hitherto unthought of by mortal minds. It's like how so many theists don't understand how they could absolutely be worshipping a Satan wearing a god hat without realizing it. It's always wild to me. Frankly, it's less faith and more completely unjustified confidence.
All right, and then the third question.
All right, it's third question. Cannot wait to find out how dumb this one is. Because if you started with your strongest one first, oh boy, we are in for a doozy of a dumb.
Is why can't I heal God when I play? Now, there's some people that...
Okay, I gotta point out that he has been betrayed by his own voice again, and somehow his own subtitles. But what he said was, hear God when I pray. Again, I am not making fun of him for how he speaks. He can't help that. But I am making fun of the fact that he didn't correct, or perhaps didn't even notice, that his subtitles didn't say what he actually meant. Because again, he's probably an idiot, which is something he could fix if only he wanted to. And of course, to quickly answer, you don't hear him when you pray because he's not real. And even if you did, the voice talking back to you would in fact be you. Now let's find out why that couldn't be the case, because he doesn't want it to be the case.
You know, like when they were a kid, they were constantly going after God. Or they were constantly playing and doing all the Sunday Bible school stuff. But then when they become an adult, they stop it all and they kind of go away from the faith because, you know, they never felt God. Or they kept on playing, you know, even as an adult. And they're like, well, God's not revealing himself to me, which means he's not true. He's not real. Now, the issue with this is if you're going to have that conclusion, then you're not doing it faithfully.
And of course, his ultimate conclusion isn't that if God's not giving you anything at all, as so many theists will tell you that he definitely does, that maybe those people are full of shit. No. It's actually that you were doing it wrong. Of course, I would argue that hearing voices in your head and then deciding that, actually, those must be coming from Mr. Ultimate Man because of how special I am, is you doing it wrong.